Hello and welcome to
Once and Future Tech.
Bonus awarded.
Right, let's begin. Today we have a very special episode, at least as far as I'm concerned. Tad Woods, the developer of today's game, agreed to answer some questions about its not only its development, but also about its history, its influences. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. Spacestation Pheta is the game. It's chiefly a platformer that was developed in the 1980s and distributed via Shareware. For those of you who don't know, Shareware was a kind of physical distribution model. People would put a demo on a floppy disk and give it around to friends and family. And the aim was that if people liked the game enough, that they would eventually pay for it. Spacestation Pheta is an example of a Shareware title that I played extensively as a kid. The player controls the spaceman, and the objective is to escape a total of 100 levels, completing each by accessing the appropriate exit door and surviving a number of navigational puzzles while avoiding misadventure.
Bonus awarded.
Fans of the Lode Runner series may see some similarities here. We've got ladders, we've got pickups. The ultimate objective is to escape. In Lode Runner, collecting all of the pickups in the level granted access to an escape ladder. In Spacestation Pheta, keys were used to unlock doors. In some levels, you would have to collect more than one key to unlock additional doors to access the final exit. Pheta also includes other pickups, such as oxygen, which extends the amount of time available to you to complete the level. When you run out of oxygen, you lose a life. Additionally, you could collect energy containers to add points to your score. At specific points thresholds, you then gained an additional life. Unlike Lode Runner, Spacestation Pheta doesn't have any enemies. One of the reasons for this that Tad Woods explains is that that's because Lode Runner was not a direct inspiration for Spacestation Pheta, though it was for his follow-up game, Gold Digger. Although I never owned or spent much time playing Lode Runner, it eventually might have inspired a little of Gold Digger: The Lost Mines. Gold Digger's time-release dynamite, variable-length rope and hook, and multiply-disciplined adversaries presented new thinking-required characteristics while still providing decent action. It's perhaps worth noting at this stage that Spacestation Pheta was not initially conceived of or even developed by Tad Woods. It was actually created by a guy called Jeff Bunting for the TI-99 4A computer. In Kilgruz's YouTube review and history of Spacestation Pheta, he notes that the Mac version of the game, developed by Tad Woods, is somewhat controversial. Citing a 2017 Atari Age message board in which Bunting responded to a few users' questions, Kilgruz notes that Bunting was completely unaware of the Mac version, suggesting that Woods may have adapted his concept without his knowledge. However, it seems clear that Bunting was at least aware of Woods' adaptation of Pheta for the TI-99 4A at the time. Both Woods and Bunting acknowledged that they were part of the same Virginia-based Texas Instruments user group, and Bunting states, "Tad Woods and his father were members of the same local TI users group that I was, Roanoke Valley 99ers, I think it was, and he created his fourth version based on my extended basic version of the game I gave out to the group." From Woods' perspective, Bunting gave him permission to adapt Pheta for the TI-99, which Woods later ported to the Macintosh. He states, "As for the origin of Spacestation Pheta, a friend, presumably Bunting, in the Texas Instruments TI-99 4A club shared with me the original concept programmed in BASIC. With his blessing, I further developed the idea, added tricks and traps, smooth animations, the screen designer, and speed programmed in Forth. The game ran many times faster than mostly BASIC coded programs of the time. I self-published the TI-99 4A game in 1984, demonstrating it at a regional computer show. I later rewrote the game again in Pascal for the black and white Macintosh and later added some color." Regardless of the origins of Spacestation Pheta, It remains a very entertaining platforming game, and I think one of the reasons for this is because that it requires the player to think ahead. There are a lot of devious traps and ways in which the player can die and get waylaid. The spaceman can be launched high into the air, electrocuted, teleported to a deadly location, and, as is most common, fall to his death. Woods explains that this focus on puzzles rather than enemies was intended, as he wanted to differentiate the game from other titles. He states one inspiration was wanting to create something different than the homemade Frogger-like games that were abundant and relatively easy to program at that time. Woods also acknowledges that he was working within specific restraints, including his own limited programming experience during development. Another reason was the limitation of graphics capabilities. These inspirations and limitations kept the game simple, and simple turns out to be better sometimes. The game has a variety of options in its settings menu, including choosing between alternative sound samples, changing the key mapping, and setting the speed at which the spaceman runs. This level of customization was a welcome inclusion in what was otherwise quite a simple concept. In the demo version of the game, players were limited to the first 10 levels. Upon successful completion, they started over and the pace of the spaceman gradually increased. By the time you had played those 10 levels a few times, you had to be extremely careful when tapping a key because you could inadvertently advance the spaceman too many spaces and send him careening to his death. Yeah, so this is how I played the game. I just kept going through the same 10 levels over and over again. The spaceman would get faster and faster, and through no fault of my own, because I was a great player, he would sometimes just walk off the edge and die. Woods included a few features with the game that were relatively unique at the time. One very welcome addition was the fact that you could select any level from the menu bar. While you didn't retain the progress of your gameplay up to that point, such as extra lives, it did mean that you were given the opportunity to experience other levels if you managed to get stuck. Another novel feature was Woods' embedding of a solutions guide. By going to the menu, you can have the computer run the spaceman through the level in real time, so you can see how the level is meant to be completed. Finally, and perhaps most notably, a full level editor was included with the game, which allowed users to create their own diabolical mazes of platforms, ladders, and death traps. Playing Spacestation Pheta is a really entertaining experience. It was never developed for any of the newer operating systems, Windows, Mac OS X. It was only ever developed for classic Mac OS. The interesting thing, though, is that you can still buy it from Tad Woods' website, TNT Software. I really enjoyed the opportunity of being able to share Spacestation Pheta with you, and of course I'd like to thank Tad Woods for agreeing to take part. But before we close, I'd like to share with you a music track that Wayne produced for this video that pays homage to Spacestation Pheta. We'll do that alongside some of the gameplay footage. Alright, thanks so very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bonus awarded.
Jump.